Can we see if the jury is ready and get them back as soon as possible since we got a late start this morning? Can y'all move that a little bit because that's kind of blocking the defense's view of the jury.
Is this all right?
I don't know. Is that okay? Is that better?
The same, Your Honor. Just now.
Jury. That's not going to work. Put it way over there, maybe.
Well, I don't know. I'm good. I'm talking about it.
I mean, that's fine, but
I'll put it. Is that all right?
that works. Sorry.
That's all right, John.
Thank you.
I don't know who designs courtrooms, but I don't think they ask anybody who uses courtrooms. Jury ready? All right. They do, yes. Now we have 3 podiums, so. You can roll the screen over this way some, maybe, if you want them to be able to see them both. I don't know. Now's not the time. Let's do that at lunch. 30 more minutes or so. Thank you. I think that screen maybe stopped working halfway through. So the other one, either the one above or the one, I think the one below doesn't work, but the one above does. They'll switch it up at lunch. Thank you. All right, I think y'all probably saw that your lunch is there. We've got about 30 more minutes of Mr. Atkins opening, and then we'll break for lunch, and then we'll come back and hear the defense closings. Okay? All right, go ahead, Mr. Atkins.
We ain't really going.
So, we just saw that video, right, in 2015, and here we have the same picture, right? Kelvin Watts, Nut Life times 2, because you have Shamel Drinks, Kelvin Watts in this post. And that is the projectile that murdered Shamel Drinks and the projectile that murdered Donovan Thomas. Same victims, right? You had Donovan Thomas with Lucci, and you saw how they treated Lucci. Now Donovan Thomas with Kelvin Watts, and you saw the connection. Similar victims over time with different YSL co-conspirators committing the crimes, often together. Not always the same, but similar patterns, which is important for RICO. Now, other connections. You heard about...
We got to take that name out.
We got to take Buddy's name out of the song in case she gets whacked.
I fuck around and get whacked. You know that shit come down on us. Yeah.
Because it's going to come down on us. This lets you know that they try to toe the line to get right to where they can diss an op or say something but have some deniability. And then this is a song. That's Garlington. Get shell whacked. It doesn't, yes, it's just a song, but when you're shooting and continuing to promote violence on the same people, that creates a pattern. And that was Deamonte Garlington and DeMarco Boyer, who was those phone calls you heard about the night of Shamel Drinks' murder. So what other connections do we have? Well, if you keep going, we talked about this drug sale, right? This is Deamonte Beebe. Who was with him? Darius Ford, right? This is back in 2020 at, I believe, 151 Cleveland. There's Darius Ford. Now, you have, it should come up here. This is Rodelius Ryan and Deamonte Beebe, right? So remember this. Ford, Beebe, Ryan, it's like a 6 degrees of separation through different crimes. So follow me here. This is Darius Ford and Rodelius Ryan.
We right back running through this shit. Yeah, snap fuck wrong with y'all, nigga. We right back running through this shit. Fuck wrong with y'all. Yeah, peace and blessings. Gang, peace and blessings like shit. Peace and blessings.
This is Rodelius Ryan saying FYFN. Then you have Garlington, right? We got y'all boys. Ryan, Ford. This is Darius Ford. That's Christian Miller. That Garlington's posting, right? It's the YSL enterprise and how they view each other. And if you exact violence on one of them, they're all going to try, or if you get a rival or an op, it's for the gang. It's for the enterprise. And then if we keep going with this, this is 05 Driving Slim. This is Christian McMiller with Rodelius Ryan at Slime Business Rod, right? And he puts the heart emoji in the snake. Then you have Shannon Stillwell and Darius Ford, right? And then you have Garlington talking about spinning it every night.
When I smoke with United
So
Bum
playing a song where
Spin that
in the
shit
mix
every
of
day, every
shooting
night.
Chanel
Back
drinks,
to back
right?
to back to back to back.
So yes,
Y'all niggas
it's a
can't even
song,
trap.
but it has a
Nothing
different
post up,
context
nothing
when
cute
you
with the
know what they
whole
do.
barbecue, man. We spin.
This is from Ryan's Instagram, right? Slack. This is SB. What's up? Using Garlington's Instagram to Rodelius Ryan, right? There's connections between the co-conspirators, and it shows a pattern where they commit crimes together. It may just be Darius Ford and BB selling drugs, but then it also may be shooting up all of these homes or murdering people, and they work in concert together. Now, it has to have, what is an enterprise, right? In this case, it's the criminal street gang. It's got to have a common purpose. It has to have a common kind of ongoing nature. It doesn't have to be a formal, like, employee roster or something like that. It can be a loose or informal relationship amongst them. It's as simple as that. You've seen how the way that YSL, the common identifiers, and the way that they act and speak in concert shows that they have, I would argue, more than a loose relationship with one another. In determining it, you can use the pattern to prove the enterprise. This is where the crimes themselves and how they're committed kind of help you in, is there an enterprise? Well, the way that they work in concert shows you that there is. And I misspelled, there's always one word in every slide, and I've checked this thing 20 times, so I apologize. Racketeering. I knew there'd be one. Okay. So, is this a RICO?
Right? Yeah, Uncle had wanted me to call you. The man got jumped on.
I know it. That's why I was telling y'all the last time I told you. I say when Lamar leaves the classification, make sure y'all tell him to hit so a nigga know
We
what's
called
going on.
we called you soon. He got up there, but see what Uncle was trying to see. They were saying it was a mob nigga and some 9 dude niggas jumped on, bro.
Yeah, we just heard the same thing too. That's why we trying to figure out who the fuck up there mob and probably jumped in with some YFN niggas or some shit.
Yeah, that what folk were trying to call you and see like who the hell that was.
So, do it for Phil, right? Trying to get protection is with, in the other car with Parmavius Nichols after the murder of Shamel Drinks. Talking about Unfunk. Do it for Phil, the person who's hashtag top shotter, happy snake day at Slime Business Ride, is Miles Farley. The same person who's in the Ford Fusion with Parmavius Nichols when they're at the gas station and then pulls out behind Shamel Drinks, right? So you see this connection and support where when one goes in jail and someone tries to jump Farley, the gang gets protection. And they may use an allied gang. That's a pattern, and it's to further the enterprise because you don't want to get caught or get harmed. So take it a step further. This is Christian Eppinger, YSL Brish. That's Unfunk he's posting. Here's Eppinger, Wooney Lee, and BB, right? Only the Slimes all together. Now, when you have Unfunk, Garlington, and someone, so you have Eppinger in 2016 saying free Unfunk, right? Then in 2022, you have Christian Eppinger and Sumlin having that jail call to try to get Lucci. And then you have Unfunk and Garlington trying to get protection because YFN, the same group of Lucci, is trying to hurt Miles Farley. So there's connections between the acts. There's patterns in the interactions amongst each other. And if you take it a step further, then you have Wooney Lee with Shannon. You heard about No Slime Left Behind. Wooney Lee with Kendrick, actively promoting the gang. Yes, it may just be a photo. But when people think you murdered people, shot people, and got away with it, it has a different context to that. It has a much different context. What is Kenneth Copeland roughly 2 weeks before this indictment? How is he interacting, right? He comes up here like everything's in the past. This is Kenneth Copeland.
He heard something about police been knock up 43, they got a 43-man indictment.
That what Font said?
That what Toon said.
I don't know. He ain't told me that.
Yeah, he said that what he heard, but you know, he probably just talking. Ain't no telling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you think for what?
I had Jake out of what's the name of him?
What you think for what though?
He just said RICO, I guess.
RICO, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what he said. But I don't know how true it is. I told that shit, that stuff Instagram.
Better stay off Instagram.
Yeah.
Not like RICO.
Yeah.
What RICO? I'm not a criminal enterprise, right? They're casually Copeland, and it kind of makes you think when he's in this witness stand, like, I'm a changed man or I don't hang out with them anymore, right? This is him in April 23rd of 2022. If you look at the indictment date, it's May 9th, 2022. That's 2 weeks before that indictment. And he's calling Garlington, who he said told him about what happened, that all of these two defendants when they murdered Donovan Thomas. Think about that when you determine credibility in RICO. Taking it a step further, you have some.
No, listen, man. I just got.
Well, it's the call where he says he just got off the phone with Woody, and that YSL stuff is hot. You need to take that down, right? And then at the very end of that, and I won't play the whole thing, but it's in evidence, they say, we need to take that YSL because it's hot, get off social media, right? So that shows you that they know, they just don't want to get caught. This RICO conspiracy, this is your verdict form. When we talked about A and B, it's going to look like this. As to conspiracy to violate subsection A, we the defendant. A, acquire and maintain property, knowingly and willfully conspire. B is those objectives I talked about. Did you participate in the enterprise, knowing and understanding that a pattern of racketeering, which remember, check the indictment for the crimes. Do you think that they knew, when these two defendants from January 10, 2015 onward, that there would be robbery, aggravated assault, intimidating witnesses? I mean, of course they did. But think about that when you look through this, because you have to decide, is it A or is it B? I believe it's both, but you can find either as a jury when you deliberate. And remember, some evidence can factor into both. The robberies can be A. The stolen guns can be A. They also can be a part of B when you create a pattern. And then on the bottom, it's going to ask you about guilty, guilty. Please identify on the next page the overt action find. So when y'all agree unanimously on an overt act, and you got to find one after May 10th, 2017, the good news is there's plenty that the state has proven happened after that date, so they shouldn't be hard to find. You write them down. And if you need to write 50, write 50. If you need a pen, ask the court reporter. She'll come bring you an extra pen if y'all need and run out of ink. But fill it out on the form after this, once you all deliberate and talk through the evidence. And you will find them guilty of the RICO enterprise when you look at the evidence and the common sense, reasonable inferences from all of it and some of these connections. I just gave you a few. I could do this 6 degrees of separation with multiple crimes throughout the case, but I tried to pick a couple to show you. And participation in treating activity, this is much simpler. You know, the RICO enterprise and the criminal street gang is one in part the same. Criminal street gang activity is there is a gang, YSL. Clearly the evidence has shown at this point that YSL is a criminal street gang, right? Are they a part of that street gang? Do they commit criminal street gang activity? For purposes of this indictment, the judge will instruct you that the street gang charges, the firearm possessed during the drugs for Kendrick and the murder of Shamel Drinks for Shannon Stillwell, both murder and possession of firearm during commission of a felony, which is the drugs, are criminal street gang activity. So all you really have to decide, in my mind, is there a nexus to the street gang? And I'm going to, this goes on to explain criminal street gang activity, which the judge will tell you that for these crimes, they are street gang activity. You just have to find Kendrick and Stillwell and the YSL street gang, which for all intents and purposes is the same as the criminal enterprise we've just been describing. And I'm going to, B is in order to maintain or increase status. So you'll see Shannon Stillwell has B. When he murdered Shamel Drinks, do you think that was in order to boost his YSL street cred and increase his status? Of course it was. He had no personal disagreement with Shamel Drinks. The only reason to murder him is because you saw all this public posting about get back, revenge, and he has that tweet I had earlier of up the score. That, when Shannon Stillwell committed that murder, it was to further the street gang. There's no other reason that makes any sense. And it would certainly boost his common signs, symbols, and tattoos. I only have a snippet. This is very similar to the first witness belt nap, right? Y'all have heard ample evidence of all these identifiers. You've heard about slat, slime, the lizard, the snake, the green, Copeland with the hand sign. Y'all are basically gang experts at this point, probably yourselves, because you've heard a lot about it. But it's important to show you the evidence over time. Tattoos, I've talked a lot about these. I think it's important to, these permanent YSL lifestyle. This is Trontavia Stevens. That's Antonio Sumlin. That's Antonio Sumlin. That's the Deamonte Kendrick. Slime Life, YSL. And then you have face tattoos, Javon Fleetwood. Then you have Walter Murphy's going to come up, and Christian Eppinger. Public YSL tattoos on their face. Essentially a walking billboard for the enterprise. And if you commit a crime with that on your face, it's to help let people know this is from YSL. Going a little bit further, 3 or more members, clearly there's 3 or more. RICO was 2 or more. Gang, you need at least 3. So you can't have a gang of 2 under the law. It's the same principle. That block is easily checked as an element. This is just pictures of multiple. This is Rodelius Ryan adding all of the slimes. This is Kendrick, Copeland, Zachary, ball up them slimes back in 2014. And that's Trontavia Stevens, again, showing you how they publicly accept and acknowledge the gang, at least when they're outside of a courtroom. Going further, this is Quindarius Zachary, November 6th, 2014. Well, I'll keep going, but it's the video y'all watch where he says YSLD, big bullets, and he's pointing a gun at a camera. That's just him publicly. And then firearms, right? This criminal street gang is armed constantly. These are some examples of acts where this is Shannon Stillwell with that firearm, Trontavia Stevens with this firearm. Going further, that's Christian Eppinger with a stock of guns. YSL Brish, who said they want smoke. That's Zachary, still don't know any better. YSL Little D. They have these firearms because they use them. They're not sport hunting. They're not collecting them. They're shooting people with them, as you've seen repeatedly. This is Waters Road, the drum magazine, the double magazine where it's taped together. That was the stolen one from the cargo. I'm just showing you examples, and if you think about it, it's quite a lot of guns, either in photographs or physically introduced. Why do they need them? For the enterprise, and for the context of this, the street gang. This is from May 9th, 2022. All of the guns in the home. Again, 2022 and 2015, they all are stopped and have and use firearms. That's the violence. That's the tool for the street gang. More firearms. This is from Rodelius Ryan in the middle with 6 firearms. This is Zachary with an AK, Zachary with an AK. This is Shannon Stillwell with nothing compatible in the trenches but a carbine, right, in 2020, over at Act 115. Over and over and over, they show you we have guns, we use guns, we're not afraid to use it. Believe them. The evidence has shown it. Gang detectives, I'm not going to go through everything. I think you've heard a lot, right? And what they talked about was not fantasy. Gaither and Dennis, when they talked about getting woken up in the middle of the night with all of this 2015, they interviewed Walter Murphy. They interviewed Quindarius Zachary. They interviewed Copeland 6 times. Not an easy task. All of that stuff they did repeatedly. They didn't, and they all acknowledged. This is Jeffrey Williams. The cops asked them all. They know my business in all the jurisdictions. They all testified about YSL Street Gang, identifiers, identified members. Are they all wrong? Are they all just, Gaither and Dennis are just making up crimes? No. YSL is a criminal street gang as shown by their actions. And Detective Belknap discussed the origins of Rock Crew, how it became YSL. He also mentioned how YSL, the street gang he started hearing about in schools before the record label was formed, and the rivalry between the YSL and Inglewood family. I just simple 2 words, or I guess it's 3. 2015 first wave. This is waves of violence and a tsunami of evidence about a criminal enterprise operating throughout. And the second wave, Rito told you about it. She told you about all these back and forth shootings in 2019 and 2020, and she talked about what was going on in just 1 month, March of 2022. And all of these social media she was clipping by, it seemed like almost the hour, to show this public disrespect. Same group, same victims, same rivalry in YSL and YFN. Nothing has changed except time. That's how you know it's a criminal enterprise actively afloat. May 9th, 2022. So for Kendrick, he's with Duke, Martinez Arnold in 2015 when they're stopped by Trestle Tree. You've seen the photographs of the marijuana and the firearms. He's in Jeffrey Williams' house. This is in May of 2022. Him actively having this arm protection, firearms, and being in a house and then running when the police come with 2 other identified, documented street gang members. It furthers the gang's interest to have multiple YSL members together, even in one of their own homes, because as you've seen, they're going to always be armed and have firearms. So all you have to decide, in my opinion, if you meet the other elements, is there a street gang? Is there 2 or more members? Is his possession of the marijuana and firearm collective construction, which Ms. Hilton will talk to you about, in furtherance of the gang? And I'll argue that it is. Shannon, Stillwell's, when you talk about participation in criminal, I made it green to say found. Like I said, I don't need to belabor this much. I think it's quite obvious that Shamel Drinks is a textbook example of a gang murder, where they literally just shoot him because they happen to see him at a gas station. He's a rival, that they're following Kelvin Watts and other postings that are dissing or alluding to the murder of McMiller and Ford, and that's why he kills them. But you don't have a license to just kill who you want because they happen to be in an Instagram post or you think or they are associated with a rival gang. That's to boost his street cred within the gang. And then, every slime plays nasty. What does Rooney Lee say about that? Yeah, they can argue that they're just trying to watch the local basketball game on the nightly news.
At ESPN got bomb on me because we blowing niggas down.
He's got a gun and says ESPN because we're blowing people down. I mean, I don't know what else to say. This is Kendricks' tattoo. You're going to see this is Miles Farley, ESPN tattooed on the back of his neck. This is going to be Christian Eppinger coming up here. Rise and Slime, ESPN, and then I didn't clip it in there, but there's the song that Shannon Stillwell himself made where he literally says, every slime plays nasty. So these are common phrases, identifiers, and by nasty, they mean violence. You've seen it. Going a step further, is this a street gang? This is going to be Rooney Lee and Rodelia Slime.
Fake, man, yeah, man. Gang shit, man. You know what the fuck going, man. Yeah, man. Slime business shit, man. Man, happy birthday to me, man. Really mean everything to me, man. Shit on me for real. Can you get an only tattoo on me, man? We're gonna spin again. Nah, for real, no cap. Nigga, slack, nigga. It been a minute since I seen it up. It been a minute since I seen it up. It been a minute since I seen it up. Where you from? Where you from? Shut up. The light is out to rob you. P10 Clark, ready winning and he bothered me. When it's hurt in the streets, took a party. I won't try to roll to a gangster.
Technology jacked up on me, but it's their own words, right? Rodelius Ryan, it's slime business, slat, and Woody.
Sex, money, mercy that's going on this set. I mean,
I'm the DEO. I'm the DEO of this sex, money, murder set. You heard Belknap, Gaither, and Dennis talk about the sex, money, murder, where YSL is a subset of that, right? It's their own words. They're not hiding from it. They're not slat on the finger. And then you're going to have again, Miles Farley, when the OGs don't feed, it boosts up the crime rate, right? They're actively telling you what they're doing, which was in Rodelius Ryan's Instagram. You all saw this video. Again, take them at their word. Don't just take mine.
wipe your nose, wipe your nose. Big B. Big B.
I know this shit.
Little baby roll B. Little baby roll
Little baby rollout. Cheap rollout for a small size.
They fucking slump in the fucking trenches, man. Right now, the trenches keep pistols. Like you bitches up.
And they do keep pistols, and they do light people up, which means shooting at them. What is YSL about? I said the deception. You have the flash and the fame and the lifestyle, and it's all a joke. And then you have the reality of YSL street gang members exacting violence on members of their own community repeatedly over the years with impunity. The intimidation. I think y'all all know well what we've shown and walked through, the violence publicly about witnesses who come in and testify, the way that people get YSL amnesia, as I call it, when they sit in the witness stand and they can't remember entire years of their life. It's not believable, except there's real fear and there's real trepidation to coming into a court and testifying. Destruction, I don't have to go on this long. It clearly has their actions and crimes have destroyed pockets of the communities in multiple communities in Fulton County. And death. You've heard about the murders that they've committed repeatedly. It's not just words. In Fulton County, you can get a driver's license, you can get a fishing license, but what you can't do as a criminal RICO enterprise is no one's above the law, and you don't have a license to kill, and you don't have a license to operate for impunity for a decade at citizens in Fulton County. Because it doesn't matter in Fulton County if you're the richest, if you're the poorest, it doesn't matter anything about who you are. You don't deserve to be victimized. And a criminal enterprise has a lot more power and strength. And the crime that they've done, the pattern, the evidence, the agreement that they've had from publicly proclaiming it is clear. That this RICO enterprise is very real. It's more than just a conspiracy. It's alive and active. They willingly and knowingly agree to it. And they don't think that anyone will hold them accountable. But as reasonable, fair-minded jurors, when you deliberate and walk through the evidence, and you compare the evidence with the law from the judge, there's no conclusion but guilty on count 1 RICO. And I argue it's both subsection A and B, but that's for y'all to decide. And these crimes charged, the criminal street gang and RICO, I ask you guilty on all those counts. Ms. Hilton will talk to you after the defense, and we'll talk to you about why the defendants are guilty of the charged murders of Donovan Thomas and Chanel Drinks. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take our lunch break at this point. And let's take until 12:30.
All right, for jury, please. All right, for jury.
good.
I'll do a president now.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Shart, you may present your closing.
Thank you, Your Honor. Accusations are easy to make. Allegations are easy to wage. And this indictment has plenty of both. But here's the thing. There's a big difference between making allegations and proving them in court beyond a reasonable doubt to the citizens of Fulton County. It's a different matter entirely. The state has spent the past year with a hammer in their hand, banging on a square peg that they call evidence. Banging, 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 trying so hard to fit that square peg into the round hole that they call their narrative, their theory. And the reality is that square peg does not fit in that round hole. It never fit. The state hasn't proven their case, and they certainly haven't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. In this indictment, the state accused Shannon Stillwell in count 1 of violating conspiring to violate the Georgia RICO Act. He did not. They have not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm going to ask you to find Shannon Stillwell not guilty. In count 2, the state alleged that Shannon Stillwell on January 10, 2015 shot and killed Donovan Thomas. He did not. The state hasn't proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and I'm going to ask you to find Shannon Stillwell not guilty of count 2. In counts 49 through 54, the state has alleged that Shannon Stillwell on March 14, 2022 shot and killed Shamel Drinks. He did not. The state has not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm going to ask you to find Shannon Stillwell not guilty. Good morning. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I've made this abundantly clear over the past year. My name is Max Shard, and I represent Shannon Stillwell. But that's not the entire story. In fact, I have been joined by my co-counsel, Mr. David Botts, my wonderful legal assistant, Shaquille Kokomo, and it's been our honor to represent Mr. Shannon Stillwell throughout this process. And I'm excited for the opportunity to talk to all of you about the evidence that we have heard over this past year. But before we get started with that, I want to acknowledge you, the jurors. I want to acknowledge the immense time commitment that you have given this case. I want to acknowledge the sacrifice to your family, the sacrifice to your job, the sacrifice to your vacation plans. I want to acknowledge the patience that you have shown me and all the other attorneys. And I want to acknowledge the attention that you have shown this case. It's greatly appreciated. I acknowledge the fact that you have been paying close attention to this case. And for that reason, I'm going to try to avoid rehashing every piece of evidence. I'm going to try to be as direct and concise as possible to avoid unnecessarily taking up too much more of your time. Mr. Kokomo, if you could put page 3 up. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just get into it, okay? Count one, as the state discussed in their opening, Mr. Stillwell is charged with conspiracy to violate the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. And essentially they're saying he conspired to acquire, maintain directly or indirectly an interest in and control of United States currency and other personal property through a pattern of racketeering activity. And while associated with an enterprise, did unlawfully conspire to conduct and participate in, directly and indirectly, such enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. It's a lot of words. That's a mouthful. And we're going to get to talking about what that means, what it doesn't mean, how it applies to the evidence that's been presented in this case. But before we even get there, I want to talk to you about a big part of the state's case in count one, but also the other counts that they allege against my client. And that is the state's use of quote-unquote expert witnesses, more specifically the gang investigators that they have called. Mr. Kokomo, if you could put on page 4. They've called, as you probably recall, a gentleman named Belknap, Investigator Underwood, Investigator Dennis, Investigator Gaither, and Investigator Viverito. Some of those people they've called multiple times in this case. And I want to talk to you about how to analyze their testimony and what your duties as jurors are to consider how much weight to give the testimony of those witnesses, those quote-unquote self-proclaimed experts. You'll be given this jury instruction, 130-130, about expert witnesses, and I'm going to focus on the second paragraph. It says, you are not required to accept the testimony of any witnesses, expert or otherwise. Testimony of an expert, like that of all witnesses, is to be given only such weight and credit as you think it is properly entitled to receive. So, and Mr. Atkins talked about this in his opening a little bit. Expert witnesses are just like any other witness. And you're going to be instructed on how to evaluate the credibility of any witness. Not just lay witnesses, but experts as well. And there's some factors that the Honorable Court is going to give you to consider in evaluating the credibility and evaluating how much weight to give these witnesses. Some of the factors are their manner of testifying, how they come across at the stand, how they act, their means and opportunity of knowing facts for which they testify, their interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case. Are they biased? And their personal credibility as you observe it. Those are all factors you can consider when evaluating Investigator Gaither, Investigator Dennis, Investigator Viverito. So let's talk about the testimony and what we observed from the stand from these experts. I'd like to talk to you about the training. What did we learn about their training, all these experts? Well, we heard GGIA, Georgia Gang Investigators Association. We heard that a lot, about how there's 20 members. Remember? And we asked about what your training is, and they say, well, I go to the 2-day seminar every year. GGIA, there's 20 members. And then we learn who teaches at these seminars. Remember Detective Underwood? Remember Detective Underwood? And Detective Underwood was a nice lady, but she was sent up here on a fool's errand. They wanted her to testify about the intersection of gangs and music. And she clearly wasn't qualified. She knew almost nothing about music. But she said, yeah, I'm qualified because I think I did a 2-hour block a couple years ago on that. Okay. I think Viverito taught that class. Okay. So now Viverito is the teacher. So I asked her, I said, oh, very interesting. You took a 2-hour class a couple years ago in this subject, and that makes you an expert. Okay. Did you guys hear from any experts in black history, black art, any literature professors, anyone that has studied hip-hop, anyone from the hip-hop community, anyone from the community at large, when you guys all meet, the 20 of you, to talk about gang stuff at this seminar? Nope. It was just Investigator Viverito. Okay, what about scholarly reports? Nope, just Investigator Viverito. The more we ask these witnesses, these experts, about what their training is, what their background is, what their basis for testifying as experts and telling us how to analyze things, telling us what certain words mean, telling us what's gang-related or not, telling us what's relevant and what's not. It all stems from these meetings, this echo chamber that they have, where they hear from no one else, no outside voices at all. And they all call each other experts. And they even created an association to look official. Talk about their manner of testimony, or testifying, excuse me. Think about Lieutenant Gaither when she was on the stand. Remember when I was allowed to ask questions? I tried to ask her some questions when they weren't vague. Did she really want to answer my questions? You know, you see on direct with the state, back and forth, it's like a tango. Yeah, it's like a script. And then I get up, where another defense attorney gets up to ask questions. Can't get a simple answer for anything. What color is the sky? Oh, let me tell you about the FedEx video. Just commentary, commentary, commentary. Same thing with Investigator Viverito. Just unnecessary commentary. Avoiding answering questions that I ask. Clearly, Investigator Dennis was doing the same thing. He's out of here. He was sent home. Consider the manner that they testify and how much weight and credibility they really have in this matter. Think about their interest and lack of interest in the case, also known as their bias. Mr. Kokomo, would you put up Mr. Williams 70A for me? Remember this? Remember Lieutenant Gaither getting up there? Oh yeah, I saw that. This was important. This was a symbol of a gang war. This is the gang war that was going on. This is YSL declaring war on Bird Gang, which is an offshoot of the If Gang. Oh yeah, that's what it is. She told you that. As sure as can be, the expert that y'all are supposed to rely on. Well, what did my good friend, Attorney Brian Steele, do? Brought in the album cover. Wait a second. You're saying that this is a hawk skull and a gang war? Isn't this an album cover of a collaboration between my client, Young Thug, this is Attorney Steele talking, Young Thug and Future? And isn't his label Free Bands? And isn't Future's Free Bands mascot an eagle? Isn't this album cover signifying the collaboration between the eagle and the snake? Doesn't that make more sense? After all, that's exactly what the album is. Okay. Mr. Kokomo, could you put up 471 BV? Remember this? Ms. Kokomo, that's not 471 BV. And actually, could you put up 471 VVA first? Okay, we saw that video. But first, actually, VV. Investigator Viverito brought this into evidence, said this was one of the social media posts that she pulled. Remember that? When she wrote no reports about pulling social media, we have no idea what she looked at, what she didn't. She just determines what's relevant. Not us. Not you. You don't get to see that. She determines. Remember, this came into evidence. She said, of course, she didn't give us a date because she wrote no report, but she said she collected this shortly after the shooting of Shamel Drinks. I run with... What you saying? I run with cold-blooded killers. Blooded killers. That's Quamarvius Nichols. That looks pretty bad. Looks bad. It's posted a day after this killing. And it's a post, and clearly that's what it says. No other explanation. And then what do we find out later? What do we find out later? Could you put on 471 VV? Could you play it, Mr. Kokomo? We find out that this was part of a post, a story that had a bunch of different posts about fear of roller coasters, about being sick, a whole bunch of different things. And then we finally get to the part where it has the lyrics from Young Boy Never Broke Again, right? Let's watch. We don't even see these lyrics. Why don't we see them on this post? Because they're on for a millisecond in the very beginning of the switch. And we hear about Instagram and how those aren't really words that Mr. Nichols would have typed. Those are words from a song that he picked. And sometimes you pick the lyrics if you want, and sometimes Instagram picks them for you. But what else do we see from watching the entire post? Those weren't even the featured lyrics. The lyrics were being transitioned to the lyrics that either Instagram or Mr. Nichols picked, but in a split millisecond, for whatever reason, these lyrics that Investigator Viverito so desperately wanted you guys to see were on the screen. And so what did Investigator Viverito do? She gets the post. She goes frame by frame until it gets to that exact point where it has what she feels looks like incriminating words by Mr. Nichols. Words that weren't even picked by him. And she freezes it, and she screenshots it, and then she puts it in front of you. Again, no report about what she did. She manipulated the evidence. And she's caught. But what does that tell you about her when we're talking about assessing credibility, your lack of interest in the case, your bias? Does she have an agenda when she does things like that? Of course she does. She's not a neutral witness. She might as well be sitting here. But I don't even think they would do that. Personal credibility as you observe it. Mr. Kokomo, could you put that other exhibit that you put up, the affidavit? .530 VV, this is the affidavit. Remember we learned about affidavits, and Investigator Viverito was looking into the assassination attempts that she was of Mr. Rashawn Bennett in the jail. And she wanted to search Jeffrey Williams' home, right? And so she had to fill out an affidavit to give it to a judge to get permission to convince the judge, basically, to give her permission to search Jeffrey Williams' home for evidence. So what does she do? She finds a conversation, a text thread, where Mr. Williams says, YSL rule the world, kid, 24M on an N head. And she folds it and makes it bigger and circles it for the judge to draw attention to that. Because, of course, she wants the judge to feel that Mr. Williams is just ordering hits on people. That's the implication. That's the message she's sending the judge. And here I am. I know about Jeffrey Williams 3 and Jeffrey Williams 4 that Mr. Steele brought in, about the day before this text thread about Lil Uzi Vert putting a $24 million diamond into his own forehead, and Jeffrey Williams thinking that's funny, and that conversation happening, and this having nothing to do with ordering hits on anyone. And here I am. I say, oh, let me confront Investigator Viverito with this. And what was my point, really? What should have happened? Oh, yeah, I misinterpreted that. You're right. And then I would have been Mr. Smart Lawyer and say, see, jurors, Investigator Viverito doesn't always know what she's talking about. She misinterpreted that one when she's telling you what my client means when he says things, what other people mean when they say things. Investigator Viverito doesn't know. She makes mistakes. That's what I thought was going to happen. But what happened? Something far darker. Investigator Viverito sat in that chair and said, she doubled down. And she said, you know what? Even knowing what I know now about 24M on the end's head, even knowing what I know now, I would still put it in that affidavit. That's all I needed to hear. Yeah, I would mislead a judge. Yeah, I would lie in an affidavit. Yeah, I would cheat because I'm that invested in this case. I'm that invested with taking these guys down. I'm that invested. And if she's that invested in that, and the rest of these gang investigators are that invested, consider their credibility. Take what they say with a huge grain of salt. You don't have to believe what they say. You can disregard everything they say. The law allows you to do that. When they say, oh, this is a hybrid gang, and they can't even explain what that means or why it's classified as a hybrid gang, and it's just something that they come up with at their little private meetings every year at these 2-day seminars where they don't get input from anyone else. You don't have to buy that. It's not a hybrid gang. All right. Let's start talking about count one. Mr. Kokomo, if you could put page 14 up for me. And I did not envy Mr. Atkins because this is very complicated to even discuss. But essentially, the way I'm going to try to break this down is that the state needs to prove all elements of this case and all elements of this charge beyond a reasonable doubt, each and every element. And I'm going to focus on two different aspects as relates to the case against Shannon Stillwell, this RICO case, count one. The knowing and willfully conspired with one or more others to participate in the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. So that's the first thing we're going to focus on, whether it's been proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Shannon Stillwell knowingly and willfully conspired to participate in the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. Knowingly and willfully. Not he was just there, not he just hangs around. Knowingly and willfully conspired. And then the second part that we're going to focus on a little bit later is number 6 and 7. That someone committed, or that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that someone committed an overt act to further the criminal objective of this conspiracy. So, thank you, Mr. Baker. So when we're talking about the question about whether Mr. Stillwell knowingly and willfully conspired to basically take part in racketeering activity, a pattern of racketeering activity. I think we have to look at this whole case in context. I think we have to consider the origin story of what everyone's calling YSL, whatever you want to call it. The state seems to suggest that a bunch of people all came together to commit crimes. Just a big conspiracy. We're all going to come together and we're going to be a racketeering organization. That's not the case. Now, let me be clear. Of course, crimes were committed. Crimes were committed by people with YSL tattoos on their face. Crimes were committed by people that use YSL emojis on social media. Crimes, I'm sure, were committed by people that use the word slap. But that's not the issue here. The issue is whether Shannon Stillwell knowingly and willfully conspired to be part of this RICO organization. We've heard from different young men, and again, we heard from them in the year 2024, talking about things that happened in 2012, 2013. So please keep in mind, when you see a 28-year-old testifying in 2024, we're talking about maybe a 16-year-old back in 2012. And we've heard testimony from people from Cleveland Avenue. We heard from Walter Murphy. We heard from Trontavia Stevens. We heard testimony from people from Capitol Homes. We heard from Quindarius Zachary. We heard from Antonio Sledge. We know that my client, Mr. Stillwell, is from Thomasville. We know that he was raised by his grandmother. His mother was never part of his life due to her drug addiction. We know about these communities, about poverty, about the lack of education. I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush. This does not apply to everyone in these communities. But as a whole, we know the struggles that these communities have had. Lack of education, underemployment, drug addiction, kids looking for food, sharing clothes with peers, hopelessness, a sad, tacit acceptance that it's either rap, prison, or death. That's the reality where a lot of these kids at the time were living. And the state, throughout their presentation of this case, has played several videos of people, of young people in parking lots, at parks. Some of them might have a gun, using foul language. Someone might be smoking marijuana. Some might be saying slap. A lot of times people are, and it's kind of sad to watch, a lot of people talking about all the stuff they got when we all know they really don't have anything. About all the cars they own. Remember that one gentleman? Oh yeah, I'm getting my daughter this, I'm getting my son that car. You know, cap. We saw those videos, and I'm watching all these videos, and I'm wondering, you know, what's the point? Why is the state playing this? Just to show, like, bad kids, or who they feel are bad kids, just to show who they feel are future criminals? Like, what's the point of these videos that are really sad to watch? And then they played this video, and it's marked 54W, and I'm going to ask Mr. Kokomo to pull it up, but not play it yet. And it's a video where you see a group of people hanging out in the park, in a parking lot in the park, and you see Jeffrey Williams. Shannon Stillwell's not in this video. And you see Jeffrey Williams leaning on a car. And you see his emaciated body. You see his teeth that are rotten. And he's wearing pants that are clearly too short, too small, clearly been handed down, traded. They didn't come out of Fitz Plaza. You see him wearing a Alabama Letterman jacket. And I'm not talking about like the cool Letterman jacket that you might get at Mitchell and Ness. That's where you get like high-priced sporting goods, throwback stuff. Not cool like that. Like one that was probably made in the 80s. The Letterman the sleeves are all nasty, and the thing comes down to like his navel. And people are picking at him. Not in a harmful way, but picking at him, picking at his clothes. Go ahead, Mr. Kokomo.
Checking out him.
Put the camera on the nigga. Hold on, look. My partner say this man stole his swag. No.
Hey, Jay, how you say he do it?
Hold on. Let me wind it out. Let me wind it out.
Hey, Mama, get on the nigga.
Hold on. My nigga, Lil Jeff say he the king of white swagging, right? Shut up one time. Let's just let these folks see what you're doing now.
Brought out right here, man. You know what I'm saying?
All right, you check him out now.
What happens there? I think about when I was young. If I had to struggle, if I had to wear clothes that I was embarrassed about, if I was embarrassed about anything, I would hide. I would run. I would stay inside. I'd be ashamed. I might lash out at people picking at me. But what happens there? Jeffrey Williams takes those clothes, those tattered clothes, those old clothes, those ill-fitting clothes, and he twists it. He turns it around. Now, these aren't rags. This ain't nothing to be ashamed of. You can take it down. This is white boy swag. This is swag. Think about that for a second. What that means. And I'm not suggesting Shannon Stillwell saw that video. But that mindset. I'm not ashamed where I came from. In fact, I'm going to turn it into a positive. I'm going to turn it into a sense of pride. And lo and behold, what happens? Everyone starts wearing the skinny jeans. Now think about if you're Walter Murphy. Think about if you're Trontavious Stevens in that Cleveland Avenue neighborhood. You're struggling, you're dealing with the same things that Jeffrey Williams is. And you're ashamed and you don't feel good about yourself. But then all of a sudden you see someone with confidence. Someone that's not ashamed. And all of a sudden, you know what else? They can rap. And people are starting to pay attention. And the shows start being booked. And 1 second it's around the corner. Next second it's up the street. And then all of a sudden it's downtown Atlanta. Think about the pride. If you have nothing and you see someone that you know making it, and making it on his terms with that level of confidence. Now think about if you're Shannon Stillwell, raised by your grandmother, facing many of the same issues that Jeffrey's talking about, that he's rapping about, that these young men in Cleveland Avenue are facing. Many of the same challenges. And then you also want to be a rapper. And all of a sudden, this person that you can identify with, this person that has the confidence you wish you had, this person that's taking everything negative and turning it into a positive. And then he raps too. And it's all blowing up in your backyard. And you want to be a musician. And you want to go into the studio. And you want studio time. And you know Jeffrey Williams and his friends have studio time. Because now they have backing. And studio time ain't cheap. And you want connections. And you know he has connections. And you know those connections have paid off. B-Slime. We know he's been on songs with B-Slime. Vito, a songwriter for 300 Entertainment. Dolly, Wooney Lee, a signed artist. Shannon's been on songs with him. If you're Shannon Stillwell, Isn't that exactly where you'd want to be? Isn't that exactly who you'd want to associate with? Not to conspire to violate any RICO laws. You want to be there because he's doing what you want to do and you are identifying with him. What have we learned about this quote-unquote gang that they're saying exists? You know, Detective Belknap, the first time he testified, talked about gangs and talked about red and blue don't mix. They have a solid hierarchy and structure, strict rules, chain of command. You're beaten in. You can't get out. If you try to get out, you're beaten out. If you're false flagging, if you're claiming to be part of the gang and you're not, severe repercussions occur. Well, what do we know about YSL? This group of young men, many of whom are musicians, many of whom have known Jeffrey Williams since they were little, who are thrilled for his success, who are living through him. Well, there's no initiation, no dues, no money sharing at all, no rules or organizational structure, no hierarchy, no rules about false flagging. Anyone can do it. Everyone does do it. People all over the world wiping their nose. It's not false flagging because it's not a gang. When LeBron James does it, he's not false flagging because there's no gang. He's showing he identifies with the movement. He identifies with the confidence that Jeffrey Williams shows. He identifies with turning negative into positive. There's no gender rules in YSL. And there's no exclusions. You're a square, you're in. Sure. Whatever you want. You're a blood? Yeah, you can hang out. You're a Crip? Yeah, you can hang out. You're not affiliated at all? Yeah, you can hang out. You an athlete? Sure, you can hang out. You a musician? Yeah, you can hang out. You a nerd? Yeah, you can hang out. No one's sending anyone away because it's not a game. It's not exclusive. The only people that say this is a gang are those people that all talk to each other at GGIA, at the Georgia Gang Investigators Association, that don't want to hear from anyone else and just want to have their conclusions. Those people are also very biased in this case. So, has the state proven that Shannon Stillwell knowingly and willfully conspired to participate in an enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity? Well, Mr. Atkins says, well, he killed Donovan Thomas, so that's proof right there. Well, that's pretty circular logic. He didn't kill Donovan Thomas. Well, he killed Shamal Drinks. That's proof right there. No, he didn't kill Shamal Drinks. What have they proven Shannon Stillwell has done to say that he knowingly and willfully conspired to do anything other than to be around Jeffrey Williams and try to make music and further his rap career and be around people that he identified with? Okay? He's been in social media pictures with many of the people that he hangs out with. Okay? He uses the word slat. He uses a green snake emoji. Okay. A lot of people do that. He posted, he spends time in a recording studio with other people that know Jeffrey Williams. Yeah, of course he does. He makes rap videos and posts them online. Yep. Are his friends in the videos? Yep. He uses hand signs such as wiping his nose. Yeah. Post video. The state played one video in their closing about Shannon Stillwell calling out gang. Look at the bottom of that video. What's it say? Baller alert. Shannon wants to be a rapper. It's picked up on Baller Alert. It's aggregated throughout the internet. This is not coming off of Shannon's Instagram feed. This is national. Think about how many eyes are seeing that. Someone that no one knows calling out, trying to pick a fight with a well-known rapper. The Game. It's exactly what any music person, not necessarily a lawyer, I wouldn't tell Shannon to do that, but it's exactly what any music person would tell Shannon, who's trying to make it in the rap game. They would tell him to do exactly that. Get noticed. That doesn't mean he's knowingly and willfully conspiring to be part of any RICO organization. Mr. Kokomo, will you please put up page 13? This photo was put in by Attorney Steele. Who's going to tell LeBron that he's acting like a RICO conspirator? Who's going to tell LeBron that he's now a hybrid gang member? In fact, we just heard that the state said about wiping the nose meant, according to the gang experts. Who's going to tell LeBron that he's like ordering a hit in the middle of NBA warm-ups? Does that make any sense? Is what the gang investigators say, should we really take it? Hook, line, and sinker? I suggest we should not. Okay, I'm going to move on to the state's attempt to prove the commission of an overt act in furtherance of a criminal objective. And mind you, they have to prove all of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's not like I have to show everyone did not happen. These elements all have to be proven by the state. Okay, and a reminder, this isn't just about people committing crime, because I'm just going to sit here and tell you, there's no doubt that people that are in social media posts, that are in evidence in this case, there's no doubt that people with YSL tattoos, there's no doubt that people that say slat have committed crimes. No one's disputing that. Isolated crimes by an individual or a group of individuals that have nothing to do with any alleged conspiracy cannot be overt acts. It's not just crimes that, or other acts that are alleged against people associated with YSL. The acts must further the criminal objectives of the alleged conspiracy. So, what do they focus on? They focus on, first of all, oddly, artistic expression. Jeffrey's lyrics. Like, we're just going to pretend there's not a thing called rap music. We're going to pretend there's not a thing called artistic license. We're going to pretend there's not a thing called YSL, the record label. And when Jeffrey says slat in a song or slime in a song, which is recognized worldwide and is popular and sells albums, we're going to pretend that there's no context to this, and we're just going to pretend that all these lyrics are somehow designed to further a RICO organization. That's absurd. We're going to pretend Shannon Stillwell's statements about bragging, about beating a murder rap, which is good for his music career, is somehow furthering some criminal objectives of some conspiracy. That's absurd. They list in their list of overt acts a bunch of social media posts. Social media posts of people with tattoos on their face. Nothing else. Just, oh, he took a picture with a tattoo on his face. Or wearing slime clothing or Make America Slime Again clothing. Clothing created, mind you, by Miles Farley. A person who was able to, again, turn negative into positive. and turn that movement that was going on in Cleveland Avenue in a way for him to make money through selling clothing, for him to provide to his family. Turns out Miles Farley didn't subscribe to, oh, your options are athlete, entertainer, dead, or jail. He decided to design clothes. And what's his reward? You're part of a conspiracy. What does the state say were these overt acts? Well, they list a lot of petty drug selling. We heard from Trontavious Stevens. I don't know if you remember, but it was a long time ago, I know. But he talked about being pulled over. And I made sure to ask him. And he wasn't denying that he had a bag of weed on him. I said, hey, man, who went in on you, with you, on that bag of weed? I bought it. Okay, yeah, but when you sold it and made a profit, who are you going to share the money with? They look at me like I was crazy. Man, this is a $100 bag of weed. I ain't sharing money with anyone. I'm a drug dealer. I buy drugs and I sell drugs and I make a profit and I keep the profit. What evidence have we seen at all that any of this petty drug dealing had anything to do with furthering some criminal enterprise? It's isolated acts. They list gun possession. 2019, they say, Shannon Stillwell is possession of a gun in furtherance of the criminal objectives of the conspiracy. Man, we have heard ever since Shannon Stillwell was falsely accused of killing Donovan Thomas in 2015 about people shooting at his head, people shooting at the car he's in. People are trying to kill him. And you think he's possessing a gun as some furtherance of some conspiracy? Does that make any sense? He's trying to survive. The murder of Jamari Holmes, tragic event, horrible, complete waste of 3 lives. Jamari Holmes, Rodelius Ryan, and Mr. Blaylock, 3 teenagers, senselessly, all lose their lives to varying degrees. Jamari Holmes obviously loses his life in the most real sense. Absolute tragedy. No one's going to say otherwise. It's listed as an overt act in furtherance of the criminal objectives of the alleged conspiracy. It was like a 15-year-old doing something incredibly stupid. What objectives was that furthering? It wasn't. It's an isolated act committed by someone who screams out YSL and screams out SLAT. But that doesn't mean it's furthering any conspiracy. We hear about Jaden Myrick. First of all, who the heck is Jaden Myrick? I know they put him on this indictment like to try to say, oh yeah, he's a co-conspirator in this too. But they're the ones that put his name on this indictment. What have we heard about Jaden Myrick? We ever hear about Jaden Myrick ever meeting Shannon Stillwell? Do we have any indication that Jaden Myrick knows Shannon Stillwell? What about Jeffrey Williams? Any indication that Jaden Myrick knows Jeffrey Williams? Who the heck's Jaden Myrick? But some dope in the jail that's looking to make money by doing something incredibly stupid and attacking Rashawn Bennett. So he calls another dope, and they come up with their own little plan, but it has nothing to do with some broad conspiracy that Shannon Stillwell willfully and knowingly joined. We heard about jail calls. They're all listed as overt acts. Cordarius Dorsey calling Antonio Sumlin. Hey, I want you to attack some guy named, Victor Meadows, I think his name was. I can't even remember the guy's name. Had nothing to do with this case. And Antonio Sumlin's like, what? And he's like, okay, man. And he hangs up the phone and doesn't do anything about it ever again. Is that furthering a conspiracy? And this was the coup de grace. Christian Eppinger has an armed robbery arrest warrant out for him. And the police jump out on him, unmarked police, and say, "Get down, boy."